From Peter King's Monday Football Morning in America column, his thoughts on how the playoffs will shake out. He likes the Steelers to miss out, the Ravens to win the division and be the 4 seed. He likes the Chiefs to be the number 1 seed, which means they'll beat the Raiders or some other combination of events. And the Colts, as we've been talking about throughout the program, Peter likes them to beat the Titans. So he's got Chiefs 1, Patriots 2, Texans 3, Ravens 4, Chargers 5, Colts 6. In the NFC, much of it's already been decided. Saints already number 1, Cowboys already number 4. Peter likes the Rams at 2, Bears at 3, Seattle to hold the number 5 spot, and the Vikings, by virtue of either a victory over the Bears or a Eagles loss, the Vikings the number 6 seed. I assume you think the Vikings are going to win the game. I assume that's how you have them at number 6.
Yeah, I do, Mike. But that obviously was the toughest call for me. It was even tougher than Colts-Titans. Just because I think the Bears are really going to play hard and try to win this game. And if that happens, Kirk Cousins is going to have to come through. Mike, there is no single player in the NFL this weekend, week 17, who's got more pressure on him than Kirk Cousins. He's got to show that he's the long-term quarterback, not just the short-termer again for the Minnesota Vikings. Not going to be there for just 3 years. He has to start showing that he can win games of great magnitude, that he can beat the Chicago Bears to get the Vikings into the playoffs, that he can win a playoff game. That's what they paid for. And that is going to be vital for Kirk Cousins this weekend.
And you know, when you look at the Vikings and the season they've had, the games they've played, the schedule they've faced, the night games, the big high-profile games, I'm not surprised they're 8-6-1 with 1 game left to play. I think the Vikings did a bad job of tempering expectations locally. So many Vikings fans just believed, hey, all right, upgrade from Case Keenum to Kirk Cousins, upgrade from the Final Four to the Super Bowl. It's that simple. And clearly it's not when you have a tougher schedule, when you have a new offensive coordinator who ultimately is fired during the season. And, you know, the Vikings should be happy they're even still alive at this point, given the adversity they faced this year. But I agree with you, Peter. Kirk Cousins under the most pressure of anyone, and he arguably has the most to lose, because it's more than just losing that playoff spot. It's losing that luster. It's losing that sense that the Vikings did the right thing by committing $84 million to him. Other than that, whether it's a player, whether it's a coach, whether it's a team, who do you think has the most to lose going into this weekend?
I think there's 2. I'd focus on 2 teams and 2 teams overall. Number 1, the Rams. I think that if somehow, some way, the 49ers win into L.A. and beat them and force them, you know, if the Bears could win that game, force them to play wild card weekend, that would be an incredible come down from a team that 5 weeks ago we thought could very well be the best team in football. That's number 1. And I think number 2, the Houston Texans. Houston has played at times like, a top 5 team in football. And at times they've played like the 15th best team in football. Especially, even less than that at the beginning of the year. But I think the Houston Texans, this is a more than just a little speed bump game. The Jacksonville Jaguars, in my opinion, and especially Blake Bortles, have got an awful lot to play for on Sunday. Doug Marrone, possibly his job. Blake Bortles, his future. And this defense that is a tough defense. If they come to play, and we're only going to know that after a couple of series on Sunday. But if the Jaguars come to play, that is not a walkover game for the Houston Texans. But it is a game that the Houston Texans must win.
I remember starting the 2017 season, the Texans had the Jaguars coming to town. The hurricane had happened. It was a galvanizing force locally. The Jaguars were coming to town. The Jaguars are never any good. The Texans had playoff aspirations. I thought it was going to be a blowout for the Texans. The Jaguars won the game 29-7. So, these divisional round games, when you get into week 17, when you're playing another team from your division, even if that team's out of it, the fact that they don't like you, That brings another element to these games. The Jaguars, yeah, they don't have anything to play for, but they can screw up things for the Texans, so it's worth it. So I agree with you. The Texans could put themselves in a very bad spot because if they lose that game, they are not winning the AFC South. They'll be on the road in the postseason. Another team in the AFC that has plenty to lose, Kansas City Chiefs, Peter. I mean, they got that number 1 seed in grasp. All they have to do is beat the Raiders. If they can't beat the Raiders at home in a game that will deliver home field advantage throughout the playoffs, I don't have any faith in the Chiefs to go on the road and win. I don't have any faith in the Chiefs to do anything as a team, even though they have the best player in football right now in Patrick Mahomes.
You know, this is really an ancillary note to this, Mike, but I think one of the most important players for the Chiefs down the stretch of this season is going to be a guy a month ago that nobody ever heard of, Damian Williams. This is a guy who now has to assume the role, a very, very valuable role of the key running back in this offense. He's got to be what Kareem Hunt was. And so far, he's shown some signs that he could be that guy. Now, he's not as good. He's not as shaky, with his hips as Kareem Hunt is. But in my opinion, the Chiefs did a really, really smart thing this week in signing Damian Williams for the next 2 years, because they're probably going to enter this offseason looking for a running back, but knowing that they've got Damian Williams, who's good enough as insurance for them for the future. And right now, he's a vital part of this team coming into the postseason.
And they definitely need that, Peter, because without Sammy Watkins, and this is a point that Chris Sims makes all the time, they're paying Sammy Watkins Odell Beckham Jr. money. He hasn't been available the past several weeks. The offense is different when he's not on the field because then they can put more attention on Tyreek Hill. You need both of those guys on the field to make that offense go, to make it as unstoppable as it was earlier this year, and to make up for a defense that isn't good enough to allow the Chiefs to take advantage of great performances from Patrick Mahomes. We've seen 4 primetime losses this year from the Kansas City Chiefs, and in every game, Patrick Mahomes played well, but it's the defense that ultimately lets them down, whether it's the Patriots game, the Rams, the Chargers, most recently the Seahawks. It's not on Mahomes, it's on the defense. So whether it's Damian Williams stepping up, whether it's getting Sammy Watkins back, they need some help, or they're going to have a rough time in the playoffs. And if they can't beat the Raiders on Sunday, it's going to be another quick exit for an Andy Reid team from the postseason. So we've identified the Rams, the Texans, the Chiefs, the Vikings as teams with plenty to lose. I still think the Bears, and this gets back to your point that the Bears are going to play hard. Look, they've got something to lose here because they've got plenty to gain. If they get lucky and the 49ers beat the Rams, the Bears getting a bye week and forcing the Rams to come to Soldier Field, that would be huge. And I think that gives the Bears every reason to come out and do everything they can to knock out the Vikings, even though the risk is if you beat the Vikings and the Rams win, you probably have the Eagles coming to town, Peter, which means you become the next notch in the Nick Foles belt as he continues this magical run. And we talked about this earlier in the program. If you're the Bears, I think you'd rather have the Vikings come to town next week than the Eagles.
And the one other thing you mentioned, you're assuming that if somehow the Rams are the 3rd seed, you're assuming that the Rams are going to beat either the Eagles or the Vikings in that first game. Mike, I'm not assuming that at all. And, because in my opinion, of all the teams that are going to have home games in the playoffs this year, if form holds, all those teams, to me, the Rams have the least home field advantage of all of them. They've been okay at home because they've been a good team, but they have not been able to use that home field to get the kind of home field edge. I was at the Packers-Rams game, and with the exception of the Ty Montgomery stupid play at the end, they probably lose that game, and I would bet that there's 40,000 Packer fans in the crowd that day. Now, again, that's not going to happen in the playoffs, but you know what? If the Eagles get in, I bet 25,000 Eagles fans find their way to the Coliseum for that game if that's where they're playing. And so to me, I don't assume that the Rams win anything now, because I quite frankly do not know who the Rams are at this moment.
Several of those games this year for the Rams at home felt more like Super Bowls than home games for one team. The Vikings had a large contingent of fans there, Week 4 Thursday night game. So I agree with you. And given that they lost last year at home to the Falcons in the wild card round, the Rams are going to quickly become the Bengals if they can't figure out how to hold serve at home, whether it's in the last years at the Coliseum or the new stadium that's going to soon be opening. Both the Rams and the Chargers need to get a real home field advantage, or they are going to have trouble when they do host playoff games.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.